Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am McKenna. I'm the owner of Murder by the Book in Houston, Texas, and I am back today with another virtual event. You've seen a lot of me this week. We've had a lot of authors, and that's going to keep coming. Make sure to check our event calendar at murderbooks.com. I think we have about, 10, 15 authors again next week, maybe more. So we've got an amazing lineup of virtual events happening all the time. Also, we have all the events listed at Facebook. So if you're watching on Facebook, you can just see what's coming up there. If you have any questions for the authors today, you can put those in the live chat on YouTube, or you can put them in the comments here on Facebook, and I will get to them in a little bit. For now, though, I'm going to just drop a link that has, you can click on for more information about the authors, for more information about their books, and to order books. We do have signed copies of the new Liv Constantine book, The Stranger in the Mirror. I think they are delivering tomorrow. So if you'd like one of those, make sure to order. All of our copies are signed. And that is all the business for now. So let me bring on our special guests. We're going to start with the ladies who make up Liv Constantine. Hi, Valerie. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks. It doesn't seem possible that it's been a year since we've done this, but here we are again, virtual event 2 in the pandemic. It's going to be great to talk with you guys. We have a guest interviewer tonight as well, or this afternoon, so that's always a treat for me. It makes my life easy. Let me go ahead and do your official introduction, and then we'll bring on our interviewer. So Liv Constantine is the pen name of the sisters Lynne Constantine. Lynn, raise your hand so people know which is which. There we go. Hi, Lynn. And Valerie Constantine. Hi, Valerie.
Hi.
Together, they are the best-selling author of the Reese Witherspoon Book Club pick, The Last Mrs Parish, The Last Time I Saw You, The Wife Stalker, and The Stranger in the Mirror. Their books have been praised by USA Today, The Sunday Times, People Magazine, and Good Morning America, among many others. Lynn and Valerie are national and international best-selling authors, and their books have been translated into 27 languages, are available in 32 countries, and are in development for television and film. Lynn lives in Milford, Connecticut, and Valerie in Annapolis, Maryland. And like I said, we have signed copies of their brand new book, The Stranger in the Mirror. You can find more information about that in the comments. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you for having me, Anna.
All right. We also joined by, I always say, no offense to the ladies who are Liv Constantine, but my favorite person anytime we have an event like this is the guest interviewer, because it means I don't have to do the work. I just get to sit back and relax. So we are joined by KJ Howe. How are you today?
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course, it's a pleasure. Thank you for doing this. KJ Howe is the executive director of the International Thriller Writers, as well as an international best-selling author. She's spent the last 6 years immersed in the shadowy world of kidnap and ransom to create verisimilitude in the Freedom Broker series, which showcases elite kidnap negotiator Thea Parrish. And are you coming to us from Toronto?
I sure am.
All right, wonderful. Now is the time I get to sit back and relax. Whenever you guys are ready, just call me back on and I'll have questions from the crowd. For those of you watching, don't be shy. Put your questions in the comments and we'll get to them in a little bit. Have fun.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, this is a real pleasure for me because I've known these lovely ladies for many years and I've actually yet to interview them. So today's the day.
Oh, wow. That's great. Yeah, thank you.
So an absolute pleasure. When I think of your novels, the first word that comes to mind is innovative. I feel like you plot so brilliantly with surprising yet inevitable twists. So we'll start with Val. With respect to the novels and the plan, do you plan them ahead or do you just, kind of insert the clues? How does that work?
We definitely plan ahead. We talk probably a month to 2 months about the plot, and the major twist is always something that we start with. So that's the beginning for us, the big twist. And then we begin to develop our characters and a general outline of the story. We're not rigid about that. This is, here's chapter 1, 2, 3. We don't make an outline, but we do have a general direction that we're going in. So the other twists do come along the way. The ending, we have a good idea where we're going with the ending, but that, and the word that you said was very important, inevitable. And so we do feel that when we get to the ending, it might not be what we thought when we first started talking about it, but it does seem inevitable to us. So it just takes a lot of back and forth, and that's the beauty of collaborating, to our way of thinking, that we can go back and forth and just continue to embellish and embellish.
And Lynn, do you ever have that aha moment where one of you guys are, kind of in the shower and jump out and call each other and say, "I've got it"?
Yeah. Yes. I used to get those a lot when I would walk my dog, Tucker. Remember, I would walk on the beach and then I would call Valerie and say, all right, just hear me out. Before you say anything, it might sound crazy, but what do you think of this? And now I think a lot of those aha moments come more in the discussion. So we've really evolved in our collaboration. And fortunately, I think our brains have merged in some ways psychically. And so we have oftentimes that aha moment at the exact same time when we're discussing, and we both come up with an idea that's the same. So that's been really a lot of fun and very helpful to us.
Well, I love the fact that these, two sisters get along so well, work collaboratively. I wanted to know, did the dynamic of your relationship, your long-time relationship before you started writing together, change once you started writing together?
That's an interesting question. If it's changed in any way, it's that we've become closer. Because as Lynn said, it's a little bit scary how the minds start thinking alike. We'll be brainstorming something. And so, for example, if one of us will say, well, so what do you think about the character Michael? Should he have a sibling? And then we'll both at the same time say, he should have a twin. And it's sort of, we both sort of sit back like, right, we both just say the same thing. So it has become closer. And of course, we get to spend more time together too than we probably would if we were we've always been close and we've always spent time together, but now it's every day, right? Because we're writing every day. Yeah.
And on that point, how do you guys solve disagreements?
Well, right. We used to arm wrestle, but now that we're not in the same place anymore, we talk them through. I mean, we keep saying we need to come up with something interesting, like maybe Greco-Roman wrestling or something to tell everybody, because it's a question on everyone's minds. But really, fortunately, we don't really have disagreements. It's always, and maybe in the beginning before we came into our group, but at this point, we really have put our egos at the door and we trust each other implicitly with what we're doing. And we're always looking for what is best for the story and for the character. So even when we do have a disagreement, it's not really an argument. It's just maybe one is going in one direction and the other will say, well, I understand what you're doing, but do you really think the character would do that? Let's talk about it. If you were in this situation, would you say this? Would you do this? And that is usually how we come around to resolving it. And I don't really feel that there's ever been a point, and hopefully there won't be, where either of us has had to compromise or give up and say, okay, I don't really believe that, but I'll do it for the sake of it. We really do come to an agreement, and I don't think we would just accept something that we didn't want to for the sake of harmony.
No, I think you're right.
Makes sense. And I'm grateful to hear that. I think you're right. Talking it out and making sure it all is reasonable is a very smart approach.
Yeah.
So knowing you too, as I do, that you're in very happy marriages, you seem to write about a lot of unhappy marriages.
We aren't always in happy marriages. That might be one of the reasons.
Yeah. Yes, we are now. Right. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So the question is, are there a lot of things happening behind hidden doors, or do you interview people who you think have, troubles in their marriage to talk about? How do you, because obviously marriage is a powerful, relationship in your lives. So how do you guys dive into that and decide what's wrong in these marriages?
Well, I think a lot of it's story dependent, of course. I know, as Valerie said, I think she said earlier, we do start with a twist. And so we do know what the book is going to be about and, whether marriage is a central theme, which I believe, all of our books have had married folks in it. And of course, it wouldn't be much of a psychological thriller if they had a perfect marriage and there were no issues, right? So we always look at what are some common issues and how do we take that and turn it on its head and make it more interesting or make it more surprising. And I think, we both have been in enough relationships, friendships over the years, been witness to, have friends who have gone through terrible, divorces or breakups. And, we haven't always had the best taste, in men, I guess, in our lives. So there is experience to draw from. There's also psychology. I was a psychology major in college. And so, I've always been fascinated by that. And so it's a combination, I think, of research, history, and then imagination. Just how do we take this character and really make him or her so kind of larger than life, and do things that you certainly hope nobody in your sphere would ever do.
And don't you think that through film and books, we've all pretty much seen every kind of marriage that there possibly could be, I think, too, and people behaving badly, because people love watching people behaving badly, and then they can leave that, finish the book, close the book, walk out of the film, and it's over and it's done, and go back to their.
And I think what's interesting is not so much, this is my take anyway, I don't think that it's people are enthralled by bad deeds. I think what we find so fascinating is that someone who appears normal or nice or charming is capable of this. We want to be able to see behind the facade, because if we want to understand it, because if we don't understand it, that means that we have no idea, if we're talking to someone, if that person is capable of bad deeds or dangerous. So I think it is an analytical type of thing as well, not just that we're looking for blood sport, right? And I think we're just trying to understand, well, how did this person, oh my gosh, everyone loved him or everyone loved her, but yet she did this thing. Why? What made the person tick? So I think that's behind a lot of the interest in this kind of, media.
I think you guys both do an excellent job of the introspection part, which gives us a view into the working of the minds of the characters and makes it believable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Trying.
Definitely. So with respect to Amnesia, now Amnesia is used, in many books and soap operas and everywhere. And I'm really impressed by the fact that you have written a fresh story for Stranger in the Mirror about amnesia. How much research did you do on amnesia to kind of fine tune this concept?
We did a lot of research, and that was part of the appeal when we first began to develop the story, the idea that we would be able to do a lot of research, because it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating subject. And to read all of the different studies that have been done in the experiments was just mind-boggling. And of course, there are lots of kinds of amnesia. The character in our book has retrograde amnesia, which is complete no knowledge of your past from the moment that either the injury occurs or the onset of the amnesia. And as we all know, that there are other kinds of amnesia. So the fascinating part was also reading people's experiences who have actually suffered from amnesia, some of whom have never regained their memory. And so that was part of the research, just reading their accounts of what life was like with amnesia. And one of the interesting things that we came across that you sort of don't think about with amnesia is if this particular character in our book, Addison, is found with no identification, no cell phone, nothing, no indication at all of who she might have been or where she came from, what her name is. So at that point, how do you begin a new life? How do you get a birth certificate or a social security card or a driver's license, get a job? And there are people who have not been able to do that because of it, legally anyway, because of the situation that they're in. And then there was another great experiment that I'll let Lynn talk about that we both found fascinating and a little bit terrifying too.
Well, this led into one of the elements that we wanted to talk about or delve into in the book was the fact that while the mind forgets trauma, the body doesn't. Trauma lives within our body. So, even if in Addison's case, and I won't give any spoilers, we know she's had trauma in her past because the book, in the very first chapter, it's revealed that she's got these scars on her arms that indicate she tried to kill herself. So clearly something awful was going on. And she can feel she's triggered by certain senses or when she sees a certain thing and her body remembers, even though her mind can't. And one of the experiments was done with mice, where they exposed mice to a scent similar to cherry blossoms. And at the same time, repetitively, every time that they would put the scent in there, they would shock the mice, and cause pain. So of course, after a while, all they had to do was put the scent in and the mice would cower. They bred them then with mice who had not been exposed to this. And 2 generations later, these pups who had never experienced it, when they smelled the cherry blossoms, they were cowering in fear and anxiety. So what they inferred was that not only does our body carry our own trauma, but it carries the trauma from generations past, which is really, a whole nother, I'm sure there'd be a lot more research, and there needs to be a lot more research into that, which was scary and fascinating at the same time.
Yeah, I find that pretty profound, and there's some great story potential there.
Yes, there is, actually. Right.
There is, yes.
So speaking of story potential, I think we all become writers because we're inspired by other authors. I would love to hear a few of the authors who have inspired you on your journey.
Well, I love Dean Koontz. He's my one of my most favorite authors, and I've been reading Dean since I was, a teenager, I suppose. And one of the things that I love about his writing, it's not only that he tells a great story and that he writes beautifully, but he always has a theme or a message, and there's sort of an ethical side to it. And that reading his work was kind of the first time I realized, hey, you can write you can write thrillers, and they don't just have to be action with it. You can really develop the character and have more going on than just a thrill ride. Valerie.
Okay, right. So I'm at the point in my life where I forget authors' names until
I forget.
But, I have to say there are a lot of the American authors were really the ones that I gravitated to when I was much younger. So Sinclair Lewis would be a huge one that I just adored, and I loved his stories and his and how he got into the minds of people and who they were and what motivated them. I loved Henry James, even though probably the British would now claim him as their own, even though he was American, and Edna Ferber. So there were a lot of Americana stories, and I think they did an amazing job of getting into character and who the character was and what made them tick.
I think the other one too, for both Valerie and me, if I can, is Susan Howich, because Penn Merrick and Cashel O'Mara, and one of the things, and again, speaking of character and point of view, she used so beautifully, where you would have a story told by one character and completely be on their side and hating these other characters until you got into that character's point of view, and then you were be thinking, oh, well, hold on a minute, maybe this one's not so bad. So that we love that device, and that was something that definitely has influenced the way we think about point of view and character.
Yes.
I love it too when, even if you're in the villain's point of view, you find yourself almost cheering for them, because in each point of view, the person has a firm commitment for whatever they're going for. And it's believable, it's well done. You really buy into their story.
And often feels that what they're doing is good and right, and not, that they're the hero of their own story.
Yeah.
Agreed. So with your first novel, you basically exploded onto the scene with The Last Mrs Parish, and it's still going strong, which I'm really happy for. You were chosen on the Reese Witherspoon Book Club, which has got to be a dream come true for any author. Where were you when you found out that you were chosen?
I'm going to let Lynn tell us the story. She tells us about.
Great, no pressure. So I was in Maryland. We were on book tour. It was November, and we were on the end of our book tour. We were at one of Valerie's friends who had hosted a large book club event for us. And I got a call or email, I can't remember, from our agent saying, do you have some time, because Emily, our editor, and I need to talk to you. So I was like, are we in trouble? Like, what's going on? We never got a call where we had to talk to both of them. And she's like, no, it's not that, but we just need to speak with you. So we went back to Valerie's when we were finished, and we got on the phone, each on an extension sitting around her table, and her husband was sitting there as well. And they said, are you sitting down? And we said, yes. And then they said, Reese Witherspoon has chosen Last Mrs Parish for her December book club read. So we were like, woo, of course, scream, yay, and, going on and on and on. And then they said, but you can't tell anyone, not even your husband. So it's top secret, we can't have any leaks. So we said, okay. So we hung the phone up, and Colin is looking at Val's husband, looking at us expectantly, waiting to hear this huge, momentous news. And I'm scrambling, trying to think of some excuse that we can tell him. And so I just looked at him and said, oh, someone's doing an article on us. He was like, oh, are you? Okay. So that was how we found out. And, we had to keep quiet for a couple weeks. Because then at that point, they were not announcing on the first of the month. They were announcing sort of in the middle of the month. And so then, of course, as soon as it came out, we were thrilled and we were able to share. But you know how it is when you get any kind of this news, you're just bursting and you want to share. But it was amazing. I mean, Reese is fantastic, as you know, and her book club just does so much for women and for literacy. And it's still going. The book club is still going strong, and they're so supportive of their authors, even with subsequent works, which we're so grateful for. So it's definitely something we never would have expected, but we're hugely grateful for.
Well, I'm incredibly happy for you. Like we said, it just gives you that kind of platform to reach a lot of readers, hook them.
Yeah.
And I was having some fun reading some of your reviews before the interview, and so many people have followed you through all the books because they were so impressed with Last Mrs Parish. Basically, you're an automatic buy. So fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So Gone Girl kind of introduced, a new kind of thriller, unreliable narrator, psychological thriller in 2008. But this genre, despite, kind of a lot of people saying it's dying out, it's going down, isn't. People are hungry for these books. They want them. And it's proof, with your book clubs. And that is basically what in these book clubs are wanting to read. To what do you attribute that passion for this type of novel?
Well, I think, in my opinion, one of the things that Gone Girl changed was what they used to call women's fiction, right? Where you had the heroine or the protagonist was much more of a good girl, right? And it's maybe something was done to her, but she had to kind of follow this model of what the behavior of a wife or a mother should be. And I think Gone Girl just broke that mold. And none of us, of course, are like that. I mean, everyone who's a real person has good qualities, has qualities maybe that they're not so proud of, make mistakes, do things. And I think that it's just a refreshing and welcome change. And for all of us, again, when you're looking at a domestic thriller, it's a situation anybody could be in. So it's very relatable. If you're married or if you're not married, if you're single, if you're dating, if you're, whatever your situation is, it's a close cast. And you can imagine being in that world. I think it's very easy to put yourself and inhabit the world of these thrillers because you don't have to be, jetting around and being, a police detective or an international spy or anything like that. So I think this is the relatability and the twistiness and the surprise of it. But I mean, I hope it continues. You're right. It has gone for a long time, which is more, it's gone a lot longer than most, I think, trends, right, in literature. So I don't know. Maybe it's here to stay for good.
I think that, and beyond that, I think that people love a good mystery. And really, thrillers are just sort of a ramped up mystery. I mean, look at Agatha Christie still sells, and the television series is still superbly popular. And people, I think people really love trying to solve a puzzle, and and I think that these kinds of books will always be popular because they're fun. It's like, can I figure out the who's behind everything? What, drop your clues and let me see what I can put together and figure out the ending. And so I think we all love that.
I think you're right. I think it is brain. I think our brains are wired that way. They're wired to want to know what's going to happen and why is this happening. And you're right. That's a good point.
So, with respect to Stranger in the Mirror, I always love studying the secondary characters because they often play quite a pivotal role, but they don't get the kind of screen time. So, I love for just a second for you to talk about Ed and Jean and how like their role in the book was developed and why were they needed?
I'll let Valerie talk about that.
Ed, actually, we love Ed and Gigi too. We really loved them. And Ed is based on a real person who was a trucker. He's is not alive any longer. He died a few years ago, young. But he was a trucker. He was tall and sort of silent, strong type. If you would choose an actor to play him, and someone who he looked like would be Sam Elliott. So it was that kind of, and he had that sort of demeanor as well, and someone you would feel really safe with, that could handle any kind of emergency. And he happened to be the father of my daughter-in-law. And so that's who Ed was based on. And I think, most of our characters are really not based on actual people to that degree. But I did feel there was an extra link of connection with that character because of having known this person in life. It really made a difference. And Gigi was somebody who should be married to him. She was the kind of woman who he would have chosen. And I loved their marriage. I thought they had a great relationship. So.
I mean, one of the things that Valerie and I realized, it wasn't even an intentional thing, but after we wrote the book, we said, this is the first book where all the characters are very nice. Like they're really, there's a lot of mystery. I mean, there's obviously a few, but even those characters, again, without a spoiler, their intentions are, for the most part, good. So it was nice to have a book where you had a lot of characters who really were interesting, but they didn't have necessarily a hidden agenda, and these were good people. We really loved all of the characters in the book.
I really enjoy reading books where I can sort of see themes, and sometimes I think the authors need that to happen. Other times, it's sort of, I don't know, part of the evolution of the novel. It just ends up being there. I love that you chose Addison, photographer, and there's the stranger in the mirror aspect. You're capturing this image and reflection. Was that on purpose, or was that something that just kind of unfolded naturally?
I don't think we made the connection necessarily. I mean, we thought that making her a photographer was interesting in terms of, as she even says in the beginning, it's easier to look outward than inward when she doesn't really know herself. But we came up with the title, but we didn't really, I don't think we saw the link for that necessarily between the photographer and the yeah. I want to show you I want to pull the cover out because I think, I think we were more just thinking about, which I love the way that they did, like the broken glass and, her looking and like a distortion. We were thinking more of that as in terms of her looking, not recognizing herself and just this distorted sense of self from not knowing anything.
Well, that's what is wonderful about readers, because each and every person brings their own personal experience, baggage, and interacts with the novel in a different way. And that's what I love when you read reviews, because you're thinking to yourself, like, those people read this book.
Right.
But it's that interaction, and I love that. And I guess maybe for myself, I always look for these themes, and I found that a very provocative one. So you guys had to work very hard to get here. I know, like I said, we go way back. You learned the craft, you had to face rejection. And what is the one thing, given your knowledge today and where you've come to, what advice would you give your younger selves starting out?
Start sooner.
Yes, exactly. Start earlier. Yes.
Yeah. I think for me, when Valerie and I we wrote a book years and years ago, over 25 years ago, and submitted it after finishing it, like one draft, right? Didn't know enough to continue to edit and to work on the craft, and just thinking that because we had done well in school in English, we didn't really need to learn anything more. So I would say I would have told myself to buckle down and take more craft classes earlier, and to do more work before trying to submit, because I feel like we wasted a lot of time and energy with that first book trying to get it published when it wasn't ready yet, and then ended up veering off in different directions, and it took us a long time to come back and get back to the writing. So, how about you, Valerie?
I think for me, what I would say is, when I graduated from high school and was looking at colleges and careers, I'm totally dating myself, but for a lot of me and my friends, the idea was you could be a teacher, you could be a nurse. I mean, I know that there are certainly lots of people my age who became doctors and, or went into the foreign service, but that wasn't in my periphery at the time. And I always loved writing, and I always thought I would love to write a book. And I think it seemed like the impossible dream for me, that it wouldn't really, that would be a career maybe for somebody else, but not for me. So I would tell myself, no, you can do whatever you want. And if you want to start writing, do it. Start writing right now. But things have changed, and I don't know that too many people find themselves in that situation any longer.
What about you, Kim?
Wow, what would be the one thing advice piece of advice I'd give myself? I also would have, I think, started younger, and would have just maybe studied the market even more, because the more you study the market, I think the more you see the different kind of veins, what really reflects your storytelling style, and where you kind of think. And I don't mean right to market; it's very different. But I'm just saying, study and sort of find that wonderful niche you belong in. Because I always tell people when I teach writing that there is basically you have a very special set of circumstances in your life, each and every one of us, and only that person can tell their story. And I think that's maybe what it is: the reflection on yourself and what it is has been different about your life that you can share with others. And for me, I would say like international experiences, because I lived all over the world growing up. So that was something that I think that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah,
right.
But thank you for the question. Let's go back to you guys. So you guys delve pretty deep into some unhealthy relationships between women. I can't imagine it happening in real life. And what is it about these conflicts between women specifically that you find so
about you broke up a little bit there.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah.
What do we find about the conflicts that's so fascinating? Is that?
Yeah, I apologize. Between women, what is it you find fascinating with that kind of really unhealthy interaction
between two women? So,
correct.
Well, I don't think we had it in this book so much, but it depends on the story. So in the Last Time I Saw You, which you have a story of two best friends who have a falling out and don't speak for years, and then they're back together at the death of one of their mothers. And it's a very complicated relationship with a lot of history. And I think it's not that it's necessarily the conflict, but I think it's the complexities of those relationships and how you can really love someone so much, but yet, again, whatever baggage we each bring to the table sometimes can get in the way, and people misinterpret things or misunderstand things happen. But I think I do think at our core, women, at least I know for Valerie and me, I mean, the women in our lives are very important. We love our friends, we love obviously each other, our sisters-in-law. I mean, we've dedicated this book to them. So I think we just like looking at female friendship and, kind of playing around with how that can go wrong, but not just how it can go wrong, but then how you can come around to forgiveness and understanding and acceptance.
Well, it's pretty powerful, the themes, and using that, I find your point of view choice is quite brilliant. And that's like a critical decision when you start a book, because the book is going to be very different depending on who tells that story. So there's a lot of contrast, I think, between your characters to really make each point of view come alive. So can you tell us a little bit about what goes into your choice about which point of view characters that you want to use?
Yeah, that's a good question. And we've sort of decide that at the beginning, or we think that we've made a decision at the beginning of who, obviously the main protagonist, there's going to be her point of view. But it's interesting because in the book that we are working on right now, we had a point of view that we eliminated, and it's a central character, and we had written quite a lot of it with her point of view, and it just wasn't working because there was too much that might be divulged, or that would have to be, because when you're writing from a character's point of view, it has to be honest, because you have their thoughts. So if it's an unreliable narrator, then it's really tricky to have their thinking on the page, because it has to line up with what their true motives are, unless they're maybe lying to somebody. So that it's a very difficult thing. And I don't know that we had a book where we've eliminated someone in the past, but it really struck us this time how sometimes you just can't have someone's point of view. And then there's also the idea of, is it going to be a third person point of view, or are you going to have a first person where that character is actually speaking, and that's when you really get into their thoughts. So that's another decision that has to be made. How are they? Is it a close third, or is it a first person?
And we've actually changed sometime. We had a book where we had it in first person, and it was dragging down. So we rewrote the first few chapters in the third person and compared the two, and realized, you know what, this is a better point of view. So we're always looking at that and trying to figure out what works best for the story.
Well, you do a great job on it. So before we take questions from the audience, I want to do a really quick lightning round with you. Kind of quick answers, okay?
All right.
Favorite food?
Pizza.
Anything Italian.
Oh, I love it. Cocktail choice?
Oh,
Wine. Red wine.
yeah, I'd say wine. Yeah, wine.
Location of dream vacation?
Oh,
Reese.
beach.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Call
Yeah.
me. You're kidnapped. What's the one thing you want to take with you?
Oh my God, my phone. Because then I could have everything, my foot books, right? Yeah.
Oh my gosh. A gun.
Oh, wow.
Kidnapped.
Yeah, I like it. I'm not messing with you. Celebrity you'd most want to have dinner with?
Colin Firth.
Meryl Streep.
All right, very interesting answers. Music that most inspires you to write?
Classical.
Anything from the 60s.
Wow, that's fantastic. I love it. So right now, if you don't mind, we'll invite McKenna back on so that we can get any questions. And it was an absolute pleasure learning about all of your, writing habits.
Thank you so much, Kim. Great to see you again.
Too.
And before we get to the audience questions, I actually wanted to give you, KJ Howe, a chance to talk about what you're working on or what you've written. It's always nice to have people come on and do this, and I want to give you a second to talk about what you do as well. So can you tell us about your work?
You're very kind, sure. So the last 6 or 7 years, I've been doing a deep dive into the world of kidnap and ransom, something that you probably wouldn't expect from a Canadian girl. But I created a character, Parrish, who's a lead kidnap negotiator, and I find kidnapping absolutely fascinating. It's growing exponentially, and there are so many different types of kidnappings, and so it's really an interesting world where I've been able to delve into and hopefully bring something to the table that is slightly different. Also, I love strong women and empowering them.
Excellent.
Her books are great. So
I love the
yes,
the research is unbelievable.
The Freedom Broker and
Skyjack,
always
to be read on an airplane.
Oh,
All right. So we have some questions for the two who make up Liv. How do you decide if your character should have siblings? Why don't we let Lynn take this one first?
Sure. It depends. Well, we were just talking about that today. And so if their siblings are going to play a role in the book, then we generally include them. But if they're not, then we like to keep them as only children. It just makes it a lot easier than having to deal with it. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. We're going to give Valerie a shot at this one. How do you split the writing? Do you alternate chapters?
We do alternate chapters. Absolutely. The way that we write has evolved. At the beginning, we did more of each taking one character, and both of us writing it for that character too, but one of us did the majority of one. And now we've reached the place where not only do we alternate chapters, but we even share chapters. So Lynn might send me the beginning of a chapter and say, why don't you finish this one up? And I'll go on to something else that is more interesting to me right now, or vice versa. So it really makes it wonderful, because you've already got half of a chapter written and you can just go on from there. We think collaboration is the greatest.
Yes.
So it's back and forth now. Even sentences might be a half a sentence, might be Lynn's and the other half mine.
Wow.
We'll go back and read something and really love it, and each of us says, and I wrote that.
Valerie usually tries to take credit for it.
Yes, I'll take credit for that.
Yeah. Yes.
That's pretty funny. So similar vibe with this question. How do you come up with plot ideas? Is it a joint effort, or do you trade off? And you've already covered the how do you share the writing. So Lynn, you can answer this one.
Plot ideas come about through many, many hours of brainstorming and throwing out crazy ideas that may be silly, but oftentimes from those silly ideas comes the germ of an idea that will turn into a twist. And generally we're back and forth. What about this? What about this? What about this? And then we'll both go, that's it. And then we take it from there. So that was the plot. What was the second part of that question?
Is it a joint effort, or do you trade off? And then the third part of the question was, do you share the writing, which we've already
talked about. Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
You're covered. I have a question, a follow-up to that. Do you ever disagree, and how do you handle that?
Yes, occasionally, but more so if we disagree, it's more in the beginning of setting it up. And I think that's the biggest part, right? Because we both have to make sure we're excited. So maybe one person will say, well, I think this would be a great story. And the other one will say, I'm just not feeling it. So from that, we both have to love it. And then once we're into the book, if we have a difference of opinion on something, we discuss it and figure out what is really the most authentic thing for the character in the story. And usually that just takes care of it right there.
Yeah, makes sense. Are you writing again? So what are you working on now?
Always working on something, right? Yes, we're working on two things, actually. We're working on a short story for Audible on Amazon, and we are working on another novel, which we were just talking about before we were doing some plotting before we came on, actually.
That's great. So this question, I know the answer to this, but since it was asked, I'll let you guys answer it. We can let Lynn take a stab at it. Did you send copies of your subsequent books to Reese Witherspoon?
Yes, our publicist always does, and send books to Reese. Yes.
Yeah. There we go. So if you're watching and you have more questions, pop them in the comments. Those were short answers. We have signed copies. I will repeat, signed copies of the new book, and link in the comments. Excellent. Thank you for holding it up. Stranger in the Mirror. We're expecting our signed copies in on Monday. So if you want to order a signed copy, just get your order in and we'll get it shipped out to you at that point. I have a question for all of you. I love asking this question because it always makes people smile. So let's hope that the streak continues. What books did you read in your formative years? And was there a book that made you want to be a writer? And let's actually start with you, KJ.
Sure. Yes, the answer is yes. So I was really big into spy novels. And I read David Morrell's The Fraternity of the Stone and Brotherhood of the Rose.
Love those. Yes.
Right. Yeah.
To this day, if you pick them up and read them, they are phenomenal books.
Yeah.
It's incredible story, really, in some ways, because I literally thought to myself, if I could ever write a book like that, I would be so happy. And through a set of circumstances, too long a story to tell right now, I met David Morrell when I was doing my master's, and it turned out that he ended up becoming my mentor. So Spyjack is dedicated to him. And he has obviously been a massive influence in my life, fellow Canadian as well. And I can't thank him enough for everything he shared with me.
He's wonderful. He is wonderful.
That's wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. That's great. All right, Valerie, let's start with you on this one.
Well, it depends on how young you want to go. But,
as young as you want to talk about.
Nancy Drew was my, I just adored Nancy Drew and loved, I can just remember, reading in the middle of the night, everyone in the house is asleep, except I'm still reading my Nancy Drew book. And there were so many of them. So it was like, oh, there's another one to read afterwards. And the covers were fascinating, and the titles, The Hidden Staircase, the Secret of the Old Clock. So I would say that really inspired my love of reading, and then also I guess onto the writing as well. Yeah.
Well, not to be a copycat, but same for me. I loved Nancy Drew, and I used to go once a week with my parents, and my father would buy me the new one at Hutzler's, which a department store back then, which was where you used to get the books. And Valerie, I had inherited all of Valerie's Nancy Drew books, or half of them, because I got the new ones. And she had the ones with the blue covers, if you remember some of those. And so I still have a few of those where I've scratched her name out and written my name so that I can claim ownership. And same thing, I absolutely love Nancy Drew until I reached a point, I think finally one day, where I could figure it out too easily. And I went, I guess time to move on. And then I probably moved on to Dean Koontz at that point. So and I did get to interview him. Thanks to Kim, which was a highlight of my year. So that was wonderful to get to talk to him.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I love the whole going to the bookstore with your dad thing once a week. That's what I did, except for me, and this is just generational, telling. It was R.L. Stein books. So
okay.
Right.
I liked Nancy Drew's as well, but it was like Goosebumps and then Fear Street, and I had the list of titles that I had like torn out. And every week we got to go get another R.L. Stein book, and I had a whole like under the bed bin of them. And I had a crazy fangirl moment when I got to meet Bob Stein years ago. And it's like the only person I've nerded out with. And I think it was because like my inner child was the person driving the, oh my God, you're R.L. Stein. Everyone else is fine. But I
wonder how many young up and coming writers will have said that Harry Potter was there, right?
I've spoken to quite a few during the, doing these virtual events in the pandemic. And if they're, late 20s, early 30s and they're writing, then Harry Potter comes up for sure. So it's fascinating. The influence that, those books have. I mostly hear Nancy Drew though.
Really? That's
Nancy Drew is just the best, right?
Nancy Drew and Agatha Christie. I mean, that's the most often responded. All right. We have another question. I think this is a great question. Which literary character would you like to have dinner with? And who wants to go first? Because I don't, if someone has an answer, shout it out, because I imagine
I'll say Mr. Darcy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I might have to interrupt your dinner.
Sorry.
Now, are you the one who said Colin Firth also?
I am,
a trend here.
Yeah.
I get him. Sorry.
I'll take Laurence Olivier when he played him.
Very cool too. Yeah. Yes, I agree.
How about you?
How about Jack Reacher? That'd be fun.
Yeah. Yes, that would be. James Bond might be fun too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You'd have a good drink.
Interrupt your dinner. That would be fun.
Yeah.
Why don't we all have dinner together?
I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
Love that idea.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I don't have any more questions, and there's no more questions in the audience. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. It's been a great talk. The conversation was great. You guys covered so much. So I think everyone's satisfied, and we know about the book. Again, signed copies available. Thanks to all of you for being here, and for those of you watching. And I hope everyone has a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us. Thank you.
Thanks for the hospitality.
Oh, pleasure. Y'all have a great afternoon. Bye.
Bye.